Over the years, many Rohingya refugees have been detained and sentenced under the Foreigners Act in Bangladesh after being found beyond the boundaries of the refugee camps. Thank you very much to Professor Karzun and the Center for Genocide Studies of Dhaka University. In my heart, the only solution that makes sense is for the Rohingya people to be able to return to their homeland. But what happens till that happens? And that is what I want to focus on today. And I want to focus on two themes. One, on the precarious status of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, and two, the value of enacting a domestic law in Bangladesh to govern and address refugee matters. Although Bangladesh, as you know, is not a state party to the 1951 Refugee Convention or its 1967 protocol, it is not entirely devoid of a legal framework geared towards protecting refugees, even in the absence of being given formal refugee status. One of the significant successes of the Bangladesh government regarding the Rohingya refugee response is staying true to the principle of non-refoulement since 2017. This success can be attributed to, among other things, Bangladesh's engagement with international refugee law, its gradual economic rise, the acquisition of necessary political will. In May 2017, as you know, a bench of the High Court Division of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh handed down a significant judgment relating to this principle. It is very likely that this judgment also impacted Bangladesh's adherence to non-refoulement. That said, the right to have rights of the Rohingya people in Bangladesh remains minimal. As a result, the framework that extends a degree of protection to the Rohingya, mainly through the principle of non-refoulement, also has embedded points of tension that fuel their precarious status. These include, but are not limited to, the ambiguity around their judicially enforceable rights. I believe that this ambiguity leads to the precarious status of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. The statute of the UNHCR allows UNHCR to conclude a range of agreements, usually with refugee hosting states. And one of these special agreements, also known as Memorandums of Understanding, or MOUs, which are forged to implement measures calculated to improve the situation of refugees and to reduce the number of refugees requiring protection. Following the mass displacement of the Rohingya people in 2017, at least 3 MOUs were signed between the UNHCR and the Bangladesh government. From the perspective of refugees, the importance of these MOUs is profound. This is because, in the absence of a domestic law to address refugee-related matters, these MOUs lay the basic foundations of the Rohingya refugee response and remain the only documents that are solely dedicated to laying out the framework for their governance in Bangladesh and stipulate what the rights of refugees are. Yet, all the MOUs mentioned are confidentialized, meaning that their subjects, that is the Rohingya refugees, are unaware of the contents that shape their experiences of refugeehood. While these MOUs have empowered UNHCR to play a more substantial role in the Rohingya refugee situation, the fact that they are confidentialized means they have not done much to alleviate the precarious status of Rohingya refugees. Furthermore, the extent to which these MOUs are legally enforceable remains to be seen, creating uncertainty around whether the rights included in them can be enforced in a Bangladeshi court of law. In addition to these MOUs and the rights that are included in them, the Bangladesh Constitution guarantees several inalienable and fundamental rights to Rohingya refugees, which include the right to protection of the law, the right to life and liberty, safeguards to arrest and detention, prohibition on forced labor, etc., etc. Unlike the remaining rights guaranteed under Part 3 of the Bangladesh Constitution, these rights which I've mentioned applied not just to citizens, but to all persons residing in Bangladesh, and are, at least in theory, judicially enforceable. Unfortunately, for a long time, many of these rights were repeatedly violated through the enforcement of the Foreigners Act of 1946 against the Rohingya. Over the years, many Rohingya refugees have been detained and sentenced under the Foreigners Act in Bangladesh after being found beyond the boundaries of the refugee camps. The good update is, in recent years, the number of Rohingya refugees charged and detained under the Foreigners Act have gone down. Formal courts in Bangladesh remain largely inaccessible to Rohingya refugees due to their limited economic means and the restricted right to freedom of movement they are given. These realities have created a unique system of justice within camp settings where camp CICs, representing the RRRC, dispense justice according to the gravity of crimes committed by and against refugees on an ad hoc, informal, and discretionary basis. What this translates to is that if crimes of a lesser degree are committed inside camps, they will be dealt with not by the Bangladesh police or a court of law, but rather a CIC, even if the concerned acts qualify as crimes under our penal code. A few things must be remembered when analyzing this unique system of justice inside refugee camps. First of all, the RRRC, as you know, represents the Bangladesh government and is a part of the executive wing of the state. This arrangement clearly blurs the lines marking the separation of powers between the executive and judiciary in Bangladesh. That said, one must keep in mind what contributed to the creation of this unique system of justice in the first place. It is possible that in light of the severely strained capabilities of the Bangladesh police and the Bangladesh government in terms of personnel, the evolution of such an ad hoc system was inevitable. All in all, the confidentialized nature of the MOUs, the compromising of several constitutionally guaranteed rights due to the application of the Foreigners Act, the formal courts being inaccessible to the Rohingyas due to limited economic means and the restricted right to freedom of movement, the presence of a unique justice system inside camps which blurs the separation of powers, all collectively contribute to the precarity of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, making it incredibly hard to ascertain what their judicially enforceable rights are. The precarity, what is the way forward? In my view, the precarity of Rohingya refugees can be reduced if Bangladesh legislates a national law dedicated to dealing with refugee-related issues that ensures a number of judicially enforceable rights. As I reach the end of today's speech, it may appear that I've been critical of the role played by key partners of the refugee response, particularly the Bangladesh government and UN agencies. Please do not take my criticisms the wrong way. In an unfair global refugee regime, the first responders to the plight of the Rohingya after the mass displacement of 2017 were the Bangladesh government, acting with the mandate of its people and UN agencies such as UNHCR. Under highly challenging circumstances, this partnership saved countless Rohingyas fleeing mass atrocities committed at the scale of international crimes in Myanmar. But as we reach the 6th year of a protracted refugee situation, it is clear that while there are attempts to do good for Rohingya refugees, doing things well remains a far cry. A lot of this has to do with the fact that funds allocated from affluent states from the West towards the Rohingya refugees' plight are depleting at a very fast pace. Although the domestic or national law on refugees remains unrealized to this day, Bangladesh should not lose sight of acquiring the political will to enact a law in the not-too-distant future. This law shall not incorporate all rights and obligations of the Refugee Convention or even grant refugee status to the Rohingya refugees. Instead, this law shall be premised on the lived experiences of the Rohingya people in Bangladesh and Bangladesh's invaluable experiences collected along the long and lonely journey of hosting Rohingya refugees for the past 5 decades. At the end of the day, Bangladesh faces a simple choice. Will it preserve the precarious status of the Rohingya refugees, or will it strive to reduce that precarious status? Ideally, a national law that clearly lays bare the rights of Rohingya refugees and resolves the administrative challenges usually inherent in protracted refugee situations shall play a crucial role in reducing the precarious status of Rohingya refugees because it shall give them the right to have rights. Bangladesh shall not do so because its global prestige will be enhanced. In a world where poorer states shoulder a far greater responsibility in hosting refugees, pursuing enhancing one's prestige feels quite unnecessary and meaningless. Bangladesh shall do so because it possesses a strong political will, the kind it acquired in 2017 concerning the principle of non-refoulement, which it has adhered to till today in support of the Rohingya, the victims of genocide. Thank you.